Hey y'all, welcome back to This Week On, the series where I recap and review all of the shows and movies that I've seen in the past week and try to recommend some of those pieces of media to you. So if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. But if my voice sounds a little whack, I promise I don't always sound this way. I am getting over a cold. And the reason I took last week off pretty significantly from the amount of content I was making is, in addition to a cold, I had double pink eye. So both of my eyes had pink eye, yay. Slow clap for sickness and not feeling good and not being camera ready. So let's get into what I watched this week. First and foremost, I think the biggest thing that came out this past week was Venom. So Venom, Let There Be Carnage, the sequel to the very first Venom film, released on Friday. I went to go see it Friday night, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, I guess the thing I feel in the constant upping of the stakes of so many different superhero genres, but specifically within Marvel, and especially now that we are existing in this multiverse sphere of things, everyone expects everything in the next event to be the biggest, the baddest, the hardest threat that has been faced, and be the biggest event of all time. This is amplified, I think, by living in a non-normal box office year. I think there's been a lot of pressure put on box office and films to deliver in a specific way, and films that otherwise wouldn't be as big of a deal narratively, such as like a Black Widow or a Shang-Chi, have kind of gained importance in what they've been able to do for the box office and getting back to a new normal, or what normal looks like from here on out. But I think with Venom, what we get, don't go in with huge expectations, I guess. I went in pretty much as blind as I did the very first film. Obviously, I was excited at the very first trailer reaction because that was such a huge milestone for my channel. If you guys have found me through that, I was excited for this film, but not in like a huge way. Like, I didn't expect much from it, and so I can't say I was like disappointed or anything by the film. I think the concise runtime is nice, but the one thing I think I take away most from this film is just the fact that it feels like a filler movie. Like, obviously Sony wants to retain its Spider-Man villains. We see that they're trying to build towards something, and so what my frustration is with a film like Venom, Let There Be Carnage is it just feels like at the end of it, I wasn't surprised. The journey I went on doesn't really mean much. I think my expectations were just very well met. I was entertained for the hour and a half I did, but I do feel like I'm left feeling like, okay, so now I'm supposed to wait 2 more years for something more significant to come out of this. And I'm sure people feel that way about films I love. Like, there's so many Marvel Cinematic Universe movies that it's kind of like, I'm sure some of them feel like filler to some people. But in this one, it just feels like a middle. It feels like a sequel. It feels very much like there's going to be a third, and that's about it. Anyways, so if you really loved Venom, this is not to like crap on it. This is not to say it's not a good movie or to even dissuade people from going to see it. Go see it. Enjoy it. I think the comedy is great. I think Venom and Eddie Brock have a great like bromance. I think they really played up aspects of that and kind of the discourse of what Eddie and Venom's relationship is. I think they played that up a lot more in this film than they did the first one, because I think the first one was almost in some ways like unintentionally campy, whereas this one I think was a little bit more self-aware and cashed in on some of those things better. So again, these are just my opinions, my quick little rundown of the movie, and it's taken up 6 minutes already of this review, so I'll cut it down, but go watch it, enjoy it. The post-credits scene, or I should say mid-credits scene, because it's not truly post-credits. Wow. That was crazy. But I don't want to spoil it because it's literally just come out. The only thing I dislike is I feel like it was a film packaged with the intent of this post-credit scene having shock value, and I didn't like that. I feel like I watched an hour and a half movie with not that much consequence just so I could get that post-credit scene stuffed in there. You guys know I love superhero movies. You know I really love Marvel. I really did like the first Venom. I think I prefer the first one to the second one. My normal shows: Only Murders in the Building. This past episode, The Boy in 6B. Oh my god, this show just continues to surprise me. Like, I watched the show, thought it was going to be a fun comedy comfort show to watch in fall, and boy has it become like a show that just takes risks, and the way it tells its story, it's so interesting. I love the fact that the way the direction of the story is going is surprising, but it still feels inevitable. Like, it doesn't feel out of left field. I think some people think like a plot twist in a mystery just means like, oh, you didn't see it coming like at all. but really this has been planted the whole time. But it's such a unique story, and this specific episode deals with a main character who is deaf, and so it does a lot of really interesting things with sound. And I don't believe there's any dialogue that is either not subbed or signed. I think all of it is like most of it's from the perspective of Theo. You see the world both through his eyes, and then also hear the importance of sound as opposed to dialogue and speaking. And I think it's just it plays up the dynamic really interestingly, and I really like what they did with this episode. Next, we have What We Do in the Shadows, which I really liked this past episode. I was honestly scared when I watched it because it felt very much like a penultimate or a finale of a season episode. Like, it felt like the stakes were high, the comedy was really strong, it brought back characters. The Baron we see return, and we kind of get the reference back to the sire, so the original vampire gargoyle thing. I really just love this episode because it feels both really new and like it's benefiting from the world that What We Do in the Shadows has been able to build for itself, but it also feels like one of the very first episodes because it's taking so many, I don't want to say risks necessarily, but it's doing so many out there things that I think is inherent to the show's charm in the first season, but that we haven't seen a ton of since. I think they've almost scaled down the weirdness of some aspects of the show and made the comedy a little bit more simplified, not in a bad way, but like focusing on interpersonal relationships or really situational things, as opposed to being like, here's some specific vampire lore or supernatural world element that we want to have fun with. And they did all of the above in this episode, and I just think it played off really well. I also really like the fact that we see the change in the dynamic between the three vampires, Colin Robinson and Guillermo. But I love Guillermo's like agency and authority in the last couple episodes, and the way that he's actually being able to like really enforce the fact that him being a vampire slayer actually has impact on the story. And so I've really been enjoying that show, of course. Then we had the newest episode of The Premise, which is BJ Novak's Anthology of Now series. I feel like last week's episode was better in some of the comedic aspects and kind of just like random, but I really liked the message of this week's, which was a lifestyle guru, writing teacher girl who's basically got like the perfect life, the perfect partner, the perfect job. She's got all these fans, but then she gets one hater who comments on like bad things on all her photos, and she believes that this person is telling her the truth when other people in her life are not telling her the truth. And it comes down to, at the end of the episode, being like the main character's search for identity and inner voice, and like deciding what to do on your own, which I think is a really interesting concept. But also this episode shows kind of the bad side of self-help, and like you're just trading in like other people's influence for your own, which isn't necessarily like your own true internal voice. Anyways, all of this seems really abstract, but if you watch the series, you know what I'm talking about. And I think just the exploration of these topics in like kind of a fun, like it doesn't matter kind of way, that is what allows it to make such a like impact. I don't know. I think it's just kind of like things to think about. Like I wouldn't even say it like changes my mindset or it's so dramatic and drastic, but I think like the episodes kind of just leave you with something to chew on for the rest of the day, which I never think is a bad thing. Okay, also, What If? We got the single best episode of this show, and what I love is it's coming off of a 2-week kind of a lower dip. I thought both were fun, and I think what people are losing is they want this to build to something, kind of like what I was saying in my review of Venom, is like, I'm generalizing here, but fans are used to a formula that builds into a bigger, badder thing. Everything is important, so remember this could be used later. And I feel like in What If, what made it so great to start out with in such like a niche little show is it was kind of like, we're just gonna have fun. And I do like the fact that they've been able to pull off the fact that it's building towards something, or will have like a seasonal arc and not just be strictly an anthology show. And I think this last episode was the best, not only just in the humor, but the parallels that the show continues to make to the sacred timeline of the MCU, the live action version, and the way it's able to bring in new elements and kind of just have fun with them. And I think this is something like I want it to continue to exist in the form it does now, and not be just like trial storylines for the sacred timeline, which again is the multiverse now, and so anything's possible and it's all canonical, and I get it. I just think like I love how that the show feels like a creative sandbox where all of these elements are just like laid out in the sand, and the creators can just kind of like pick and choose what they want and like put it together and like see how it works out. And that's what I've loved about this show. But I really loved this show. I'm sad that it's going to be ending because I have really enjoyed getting to watch it week to week. But I am interested to see the way that they cap off this season and where it will lead in the future and future seasons. Is this going to be like a total reset? Is Ultron going to be able to be stopped and the Watcher will go back to normal? Or is next season going to be kind of like a war of the multiverse with all these different characters we've been introduced to? I don't know, but I'm excited to see. I unfortunately did not watch Bachelor in Paradise these past 2 weeks, so I'm very behind. I know the finale of the season is like tomorrow, I think. My hot takes for the finale: Serena and Joe are the only couple I am like 100% sure are still going to be together after the show. I 100% think they leave engaged, and I think they're going to be together after. So those are my predictions for this. And then last but not least, the morning show. This is the only one where I will talk about the episodes I did miss because I feel like they all kind of go together and I binge watched the 2 episodes. So I don't know where one episode starts and one ends. I love the speech that the Italian woman gives to the woman that's trying to like kind of confront Mitch Kessler. I do think that people nowadays, especially younger generations, just decide like that like they have the tools of cancel culture at their disposal and they're going to use them to like basically make it so like no one can repent and no one can do right by the world. And obviously life is very complicated. You can't just say that like someone who did a potentially really bad thing should get a second chance. I don't necessarily always believe that, but I do think that there are certain instances where the lines are blurred, and I think there are people in my generation who would rather just kind of delete someone off the face of the earth rather than allowing them the opportunity to fix mistakes, do right by other people, or truly have like full-fledged justice have its due. I think more so than it even applies to Mitch Kessler in the episode. I just like that the fact that that speech was had and those points were made, because I think point by point when she says like they want you to suffer but not in front of them, they don't want you to do good by the world but they also won't like let you die off, they say that's the coward's way out. And so I think all of those different perspectives and notes of like what it is that we as a society try to do when we actually do try to cancel someone, I thought it was just incredibly interesting. I love getting to see Chip come back into the equation. I love the way he handles the interview that Alex does and kind of cuts down on the time between when she answers about Mitch and her relationship with him. I also really just love this season getting to see the power play dynamics from the network, and I like a little bit more focus on that because last season it was more so like, does the network know or does it not? Whereas now it feels a little bit more like we're getting to see these things happen as they come up, and I like the ambiguity that we have towards Corey Ellison's character. I'm really appreciating that. I now have a raging headache from how much I have talked, but what did you watch this week? What was your favorite thing you watched? Have you watched any of these shows? What did you think of Venom? Leave it all down below in the comments. If you're not subscribed, I do plenty of content recommending you movies, TV shows based on themes, times of year, streaming platforms, you name it. If it's nerdy and about entertainment, I make content about it. So I would love if you joined our little community here and hit the subscribe button and also the notification bell so you never miss an upload from me. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have an absolutely amazing day or night, and I will see you in my very next video. Bye, y'all.